where I'm at, and I think Doug Taves is the only one missing, correct? From the board? Did he jump on?
He is not.
Okay, well, let's get started. It's 6:30 on February 13th, and I will call the regular meeting of the Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed District Board to order. And the first order of business is setting of the meeting agenda. I know we have a few additions from Manager Schmalz.
Did you do a roll call before?
Oh, yes, please do the roll call. Yes.
Okay, Manager Lowe,
Here.
Manager Schmaltz,
Here.
Manager Baki,
Here.
Manager Taves. President Anderson.
Present. All right, so we have a quorum. First item is setting of the meeting agenda. And Manager Schmalz, I'm gonna ask you to make your motion.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to add to the agenda a brief closed session meeting to finalize some points on Mike Kinney, our administrator's review. Should not take more than 5 or 10 minutes at the end of the meeting.
Okay, is there anything else that you wanted to add?
That should do it. Well, I think, doesn't
Okay.
Mike wants to add something, doesn't he? We need a second to that motion?
Let's get all of the changes, I think, first, and then
Okay.
we'll do the motion. You have something? Yeah.
President
Mr. Kay?
Anderson, managers, this afternoon, we received the plan drawings for North Shore Trail Street improvement. It's basically the entire, whatever it is, 6 miles or something, like that, 6 miles. There's a public meeting next Wednesday, the 18th, if that's the one. Tuesday?
Mhm.
All right, Tuesday the 18th. So I just wanted to make sure the board was aware of that. And I could just give a brief description as well. I think Mike Sandiger, I see him on the meeting as well. He was in attendance with the city. What they're intending to do, and maybe more importantly, what they're intending not to do. We could add that for 5 minutes, maybe under.
Mike, I think the meeting, if it's on the 18th, which I believe it is, I think that's a Tuesday.
Yes, it's Tuesday, the 18th, yes.
I thought it was Wednesday too, but when I looked at it again, it's on Tuesday, so we don't have much time.
Is that in the evening? Is that a city council meeting?
I think it's 4:30 to 6.
Okay. And that's at the city hall, Forest Lake, correct?
I'm not sure.
Okay, well, we'll get details out later. Okay, we have 2 items to add to the agenda. I just have a short announcement before we get to the summary and approval. And so I'll add that right before, it's very brief. Okay, so we have 2 adds to the agenda. One for Manager Schmalz on private session with Mike Kenny. And I have to ask you first if you want it closed or open.
Close.
Okay, closed session then. And the next one is the announcement about the road project work on North Shore Trail. And those would, one would be old business, which would be Mike's. Let's add that to D, under old business 4D. And the other one would be new business, or is it old? The road project.
I think for the board, it's new.
Okay. So we will add that under 3, new business, and F.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
just a suggestion, you might put the personnel evaluation at the end of the agenda so that all those who are not in the closed session can sign out.
good point.
After the summary.
Okay, so after the summary and approval of board direction, we will add Mike Kenny's last step in the review process. Okay, good suggestion. Thank you, Chuck. I'll make that a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Manager Baki. Roll call, please.
Manager Lowe,
Aye.
Manager Schmaltz,
Aye.
Manager Baki.
Aye.
I'm gonna call Manager Taves one more time. And President Anderson.
Aye. Okay, next item under new business is A, Stearns County Shoreland presentation.
Madam President, managers, there had been some discussion about this. Obviously, the district has been engaged in some work over the last couple of years in expanding our cost share program, in particular, surveying, conducting surveys of the lakeshore within the district, and we know that we have quite a challenge ahead of us. District staff has been participating in doing some of this volunteer training, but we'd like to get the requests from some of the managers. We have Nick Newman here from Stearns County to give a presentation of their program and just kind of highlight some of the benefits and things that they're seeing out of that structure. And then I think some of the staff know Nick. I've not met Nick before, at least I don't remember. If I have, maybe I've seen you at some of these other meetings on the shoreline piece. I guess I have. So with the Minnesota Lakes and Rivers, but Nick, I guess we get your slides up and we can let you go ahead.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, I'm Nick Newman. Been with Stearns County now. It'll be 7 years this summer. And you're not the only watershed district or county or other entity that is interested in what we do. There's been a lot of interest around the state in not just our shoreline contractors kind of requirement with the county, but the way we do shoreline management as a county. And so I've given similar presentations before. Don't have all the answers, but feel free to ask as many as you'd like in terms of questions. And yeah, we'll kind of go from there. As an overview here, I'll kind of give just a very short history that kind of led up to kind of the establishment of something that's closer to where we're at today for shoreline management in the county. We'll talk about the shoreline contractors requirement to be licensed with the county, what that looks like, what the requirements are, what the benefits are to that. And then I wanted to tie in too, kind of how we do permits, some recent changes that we made and kind of how we were able to do that and why we're able to do that with some of the contractor relationships that we have. And then I'll kind of run through a few things that kind of need to be in place for a program like this to work, and what a lot of the problems are in a lot of other areas around the state that maybe aren't as strong in terms of shoreline management, and why that is. So 1973, the DNR was tasked kind of with coming up with a set of rules for shoreland. It was the 1973 Shoreline Management Act that was rolled out, and essentially counties predominantly were kind of tasked with administering these shoreland rules. And for a number of decades, weren't very many changes, not a lot of awareness, maybe to some extent, for those few decades, in terms of administering ordinances and having shoreline requirements for different activities in shoreline areas. And in Stearns County, we adopted countywide zoning in 2000, and it was right around that time when we had the conversations for shoreland to have a shoreline contractor requirement. And that came about at that point. So now we're 20 some years later, we've been doing that for that long. We're really well established, and we've been able to develop that really well. And we're really seeing kind of the fruits of that requirement and how that works. So essentially, any contractor doing work in the county that is, that would require a shoreland permit, they need to be licensed with the county. And what that is, to be licensed, they fill out an application. There's an application page. They complete that. There's a bond requirement. And that bond, it's a $10,000 bond, and that goes in favor of Stearns County. And that bond requirement has a couple functions. Number one, it provides some level of assurance that if a contractor gets into a project and bails or has problems or there's significant issues, the county can kind of step in and, remediate some of those issues and stabilize a site. And second off is it's something that we can kind of use as a token to not really barter with contractors or hanging over their head, but it's something that, they know that they have some skin in the game, where there's something that we can kind of go after them for. They can't just kind of do whatever they want and run away. And then the third piece to the contractor license is they need to attend a workshop at least once every 2 years. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit, what that looks like and kind of what we do at that workshop. I just threw copies here of what our shoreland license, the contractor license application looks like. It's fairly standard. They just fill our information in and everything. This is an annual thing that they do. Something that we added a couple years ago, and I added this, and this was really worked nicely, where it asks, we were trying to get more focus on conservation of natural shoreline areas, kind of reestablishment of areas that maybe were, altered in the past, and even just things that are altered now in projects. We wanted to get a sense of contractors who do some of this work already, and to be able to pass this along to property owners. So when contractors fill this out and submit this as part of their license application, I put all of this into a spreadsheet, and then when I'm meeting with property owners on different sites and they ask me, like if we have a requirement to do a buffer or something, they'll ask me, well, who does that? And it's hard enough as it is to get natural shoreline projects off the ground. We didn't want another stumbling block. Well, to say, well, we don't really know who does it. You have to call around. That's just another barrier. So this provides us a resource that we can provide to property owners and say, hey, here's a list of contractors that do these kinds of things. You can use this, here's people to call and get some quotes to you. So that's been really good for us in that regard. On the right side here, this is just a sample bond copy. We include that so people have kind of an idea of what they're looking for. They get the bond they get through their insurance company. It doesn't really cost them that much extra. But again, it provides that kind of level of assurance that we have something against the contractor in case there was an issue. So that's the bond, that's the application, and this is a picture of our workshop we had last week. We do this every year. It's organized by the Environmental Services Department and Stearns Conservation District. We have vendors there. So the vendors, I put this in here because it funds part of the program. So vendors pay $250 to have a table, a little booth at this workshop, and they can showcase their products and materials. And this works really well because there's contractors there who utilize these vendors, and they can have that direct relationship and meet with them and discuss those things while they're there. So it's a win for the vendors and it's a win for the contractors in that way. And it's not just contractors that attend. We've got lake associations that attend. We've got watershed district staff, other LGUs, a variety of people that are there to have kind of discussions that can go beyond just what the sessions are and the speakers are, to really kind of foster a conversation around shoreland. And we've got speakers from other counties, from the DNR, from Bowser, from private companies. And then we always try to have a few speakers, property owners, that can highlight projects that they've done. A lot of times contractors may not hear from property owners about past projects, or even at the county, we may not hear from property owners after a project's completed. It's a great way for property owners to kind of showcase projects that they've done, where they've done some native plants, where they've done some conservation practices, where they've done, proper erosion and sediment control, and they can give their perspective on it. So that's a really big positive aspect as well. And in terms of content at the workshop, we do a lot of information. If there's ordinance changes, that doesn't happen very often. We did have some major ones a few years ago, which I'll talk about in a little bit here. But that's a great opportunity to kind of go through that. Erosion and sediment control practices, conservation projects, other projects that we've done in that last year. And something that we've done recently, the last couple of years, is we've had vendors actually run some sessions kind of concurrently. We called it products and practices, where they can kind of go through how to use some of their products, how to use them effectively on different project sites, and really kind of come at it from a site management and erosion and sediment control perspective. And that's worked really well also. So that's the workshop. So that's kind of the shoreline contractor and workshop side of things. I did want to kind of run through just kind of how we do permits and some of the tweaks that we made here a few years ago that's kind of set us apart in many ways from other counties, and how we what we require and how we administer just permits. So a lot of you are probably aware, got the line here for an ordinary high water level of a water body. Anything below that is DNR. Anything above that, I work with at the county. We do that above the ordinary high water levels, county jurisdiction. And there's essentially 6 activities that trigger a shoreline permit. So again, if this is something that, if these are things that a shoreline contractor wanted to do, they'd have to get a permit for it, and they have to be licensed with the county. We outline this in a shoreline summary. We've got a table, and we try to make it as simple for people and contractors to understand as possible. With that being said, you can educate all day long. Most people are driven by economics and aesthetics, and they want to do what they can do, and they don't know what they can do. So then that's why the first step in the process is to really have the contractor and the property owner, if they want, contact the county, and they arrange a site visit with me at the county. And for every single project, I meet on site and I do a site assessment and give them an application checklist. And this is crucial because it allows us to see the site before anything is done, and gives us kind of a baseline of what's going on. So then, and I provide the checklist of what needs to be shown. Everything needs to be shown in the application submitted, permits issued. And then after the project's done, the county comes out for a reinspection after the work to make sure that it's done properly. Everything there isn't really that, doesn't set us apart in any way so far. Not everybody does a pre-application visit. Not everybody does a reinspection afterwards. But most counties have some kind of flavor of that. And then here we've got our application, and here's that checklist I was talking about. One thing that we did implement a couple years ago is in this site assessment, we're looking at the site beforehand, but we're assessing, are there any kind of erosion concerns that are happening? Are there stormwater problems where there's runoff from buildings and impervious areas that aren't being contained well and maybe have washouts? And the biggest thing here is we're assessing native vegetation in a shoreline area and in the upland area. And we assign different scores based on the percent cover of the lot. Because a lot of times we see problems kind of are generated from the loss of just good vegetation cover on these properties. So we're assessing this as part of our site assessment when I meet on site. And that gets the conversation going in kind of this direction right away. And what happens is if a lot doesn't meet the score, they're required to plant native vegetation as part of the project. Otherwise, they can't get a permit. And this is kind of a novel thing that is not really done in very many places in the state. Because essentially what we were seeing is we had a lot of areas that and some of these pictures is kind of what led to us amending some of the things in the ordinance. But we saw a lot of cutouts by the shoreline areas. We saw a lot of patios by the water. So, so we're adding impervious surface. We're maybe changing the surface flow of any runoff. We're increasing just kind of more intensive use in the shorelines. And our language wasn't very good either. I talked about how in the past, and from like the 1980s, 1990s, 2000s, even to present day, a lot of language hasn't changed in ordinances, and it allows shorelines like this to just get rocked to look like this, or it looks, or it, there's ordinances that allowed areas like this, to turn into a patio and impervious surface like this. And this is obviously not what we're looking for in terms of not just protecting natural shorelines, but even enhancing them or expanding them. So, we kind of took a look at our ordinance, and we had done a comprehensive plan process, and it was a good time for us to amend some items in the ordinance. And that's what really led us to doing the site assessment. But then we also took a look at things for like pushing uses back further from the water. So it allowed people to do larger patios if they push them further away from the water, instead of just, parking it right next to the water. And then it also required, kind of a little bit of discretion to be used by staff to say, hey, we're not just going to rock this whole shoreline. We're going to require maybe less rock and more plants. And that's, really started to kind of take off and work pretty well because it is a requirement. And we've been able to do this and kind of inform the contractors and get them on board because we've had that ongoing relationship. And we wouldn't have been able to do that and leverage that if we didn't have that shoreline contractor, requirement for the license, or that established relationship with them to kind of work them through this. Because a lot of them didn't have that technical knowledge or know-how in terms of the native plants and things. And a lot of them still don't, but now they maybe have a relationship with other vendors who do that, or other contractors who do that, and they can kind of work together on those things. So that kind of leads me to, this last part here where, there are things that need to be in place, and there are things that need to change to kind of be more reflective of kind of how we approach shoreline management. A lot of it stems from local ordinances and regulations. I've given similar kinds of points here at various other talks, and so much of it stems from the local ordinance. And educating county and city staff is a big deal, and just LGUs in general. A lot of soil and water conservation districts, watershed district staff have that technical knowledge, and where a lot of the permits are administered and given is at the county level, and there's not as much technical knowledge there. So that's an opportunity to grow if we're going to look at addressing any kind of ordinance or other regulation changes. And I talked about that language that's in ordinances that's been there for a long time. It's not very good in a lot of jurisdictions. So, and there's alternatives like what we've shown here. And staff need to have that to kind of follow, to lean back into when talking with property owners and contractors as well. And then site visits are a big deal for us beforehand and after. You can't really tell what's going to go on unless you get a good sense of what does it look like now, and what would it look like, what does it look like afterwards. So yeah, and just a couple points, and this is more for county, on the county side at local or shoreline ordinances, and planning for amending ordinances is, you can work with other plans, water plans, comprehensive plans. You have to identify constraints in your staffing, but then also at the leadership level in terms of what's feasible. What works for us at Stearns County isn't going to work in every single jurisdiction. So that's why it's important to really kind of think about, as an organization, what levers can you pull? What resources do you have? How can you build capacity in certain ways that are going to be effective in kind of administering rules that are going to work well for, more natural shorelines, and how can contractors be on board with that? So yeah, I kind of ran through all that. I can jump back to any particular spot if you'd like. And we can discuss further if you have any questions on any particular aspect of that.
Thank you, Nick. Board, Any comments or questions?
Yes, President Anderson, I guess I'd like to know more, Nick, about what would motivate when you first started the program having contractors licensed, what motivated them to get licensed? I mean, what was the hook that brought them in?
Yeah, well, the work is because they can't do the work if they don't have the license. And we have a lot of water in our county. I always forget the number of lakes and miles of streams, but I mean, there's a fair amount of work. And by not having that, they wouldn't be able to do the work. And then if they did do the work, other contractors who were licensed, we do have that where contractors who are licensed will call in and say, hey, somebody's doing a project over on this lake, check it out. I don't think they're licensed, don't have a permit. And sure enough, we follow up on that, we check that. And if they're not licensed, there is a penalty for them and they have to become licensed. So that's really a driver. And we've had pretty good compliance with that. It's pretty rare that we have, very occasionally we'll have a contractor that'll come in and try to do some work. And I'm sure there's some that get away with it, but by and large, people are watching and kind of keeping an eye on things and will call the county if something doesn't seem right. So that's kind of what keeps that in check.
Thank you, Manager Baki. Manager Smalls, you have your hand up.
Yeah, Nick, I had a question. Here in our area, there's a very strong movement to actually having grass to the water or grass and rock to the water. And we have a city that has an ordinance, which is really a strong ordinance. It's the Minnesota ordinance for shoreline maintenance. The number of trees you got to have and penalties for removing shrubs and natural vegetation. But our lake, Forest Lake, is in the bottom of the list of the 836 lakes scored. This is a very strong movement. How did you ever get this code passed where you actually have to have the right to actually, before you issue a permit, that they have to comply more with some of the conservation plannings around the shoreline? How did you ever get people to accept that without a lot of pushback?
Sure. Yeah. So I remember when I met with our county commissioners, we had two meetings kind of focused on shoreland. And I showed a lot of pictures. The pictures really, really did well. So essentially in our scoring, I mean, we can kind of run through just kind of how that works. So if we have, in an upland area here, we'll say, if you have between 1 and 25% of the lot covered, you get 9 points. And if you got a few shrubs maybe in your yard, you'll get 5. And if you have maybe even just a small portion, maybe 10, 20, 30 square feet of unmowed lawn area, you'll get 5. So 5, 5, 10, 19, that gives you your minimum score. Now that doesn't really seem like that much because it's not. What this is really geared towards is getting the worst offenders to do something. So when we've got a yard that's all grass to the edge of the shore, and it looks like this all the way up to the house, that's those are the ones that we're really kind of specifically targeting. Where if you have and in terms of how did we get it passed, kind of back to the original question, it was really the pictures, and it was really showing that we were going after kind of the worst case scenarios. And it doesn't need to look like a full-blown native planting all the way across the shoreline either. You just need to do a portion of it. And for contractor buy-in, one thing that we talked about was, these people are going to still want to do their projects. As a contractor, you now have an opportunity to make a little bit more money if you can do that native planting while you're there. You've already mobilized, you're already on site, and you're going to plant something anyway. Why not plant some native plants? And you can incorporate this into your business model. And a few contractors have really kind of taken that and run with that and kind of expanded their operations, because there is a big movement towards native plants in a lot of areas. And we're seeing that take hold, and the contractors that do that and run with that are being pretty successful with it. So that was easy. It was easy buying for some of those contractors. We had a few that pushed back a little bit, but not really to the extent that one might think. And our commissioners, our commissioners bought into it too. They saw the value in having, shorelines that had more trees, that had more native vegetation. Some of them, had personal experience growing up and being by lakes from when they were a kid, and they look at it now and they're like, oh gosh, it's looking more like a golf course than it did, 30 years ago or whatever. And that kind of got through to them too. So having pictures and kind of showing what the alternatives are was a big deal to establish that to get that buy-in to amend the ordinance in what we did.
So how do you get, for in our case now, the city has the ordinance, but they refuse to enforce it because they don't want the pushback from
That's a very common issue, and we run into that a lot where, as at the county, we do everything that's outside of city limits. And there are a lot of situations where even on the same lake, we might have some that's in the city and then the rest of it's outside and it's in townships and is essentially county jurisdiction. And yeah, we have a lot of cities. The challenge there is the staffing. The staffing, kind of goes back to the technical knowledge for one, but also just the capacity that, shoreline might be a small portion of their job. And it's very difficult to get them to even administer the ordinance language that's on the books. And that's a tough thing to overcome. We haven't really overcome that here. We within Stearns County and the cities that are here, it's very common for them to issue permits for things that shouldn't happen. And we do invite them, and we've had some cities attend our shoreline workshop. I think there's a little bit of interest there and maybe moving forward on that, but a lot of seems like there's a lot of pushback from the cities. There's just kind of a resistance to move forward in some way for various reasons. But I think a lot of it comes down to the technical knowledge and just capacity, staff capacity. And maybe willingness from city council members and otherwise as well. But that's all part of it.
Thank you.
I have a few questions. Manager Lois, did you have anything?
I do, but you
to
can go
ask?
ahead.
No, go ahead.
Can you tell us the number of contractors that are, I guess, initially certified, and then how many you have now? Has that trended up over time, or is it pretty much everyone that was considering doing work in the county went ahead and applied and took the training?
Sure. Yeah. So every year we get probably 40 to, it's between 40 and 50 50 might be a little high, but around 40 contractors every year that are licensed. And not everybody is licensed right away at the beginning of the year. Some of them, a lot of the top 10, 15 contractors who do most of the work, they'll get a license every year, no matter what. Many of the others will kind of wait a little bit until they know that they're going to do a project and know that they need the license, because they're going to do something on the lake or something. Then they'll get their license. They'll send in their license application then. So that, that number, it's like 40 per year, but a lot of them don't do it right away. In terms of a trend over time, we haven't necessarily seen that number increase at all. And I think part of that might be due to the fact that some of the landscape companies now that do shoreland are larger. And whereas maybe 20 years ago, there were more smaller companies that would do shoreland work, there's maybe just fewer companies out there now, and the ones that are out there are larger and maybe do more of kind of the share. So we haven't really seen the number increase that much. It's been fairly static over the last 10 years for sure.
Thank you. You talked about the fine for people who don't have the license that are that are caught doing the work. What is that penalty?
It's a $1,000 fine. We've had it come up a few times in the last 5 years. I'd say maybe 3 times. It's always difficult because you need to number one, see who it was. We've had people send pictures in and other, and other things too, and we can work with that to the best extent that we can. But it is hard to track people down if they are in there one day and then gone the next and never come back. You're always going to have those kinds of situations. But for those, if they're like in the middle of a big project and and they want to do right by the property owner that they're working for, there were a few instances maybe where they don't know that a license is required or something, but it's pretty rare. But yeah, it's $1,000, and then they have to pay for their license and attend the next workshop is the penalty.
What was my other question? Oh, have you seen, I guess, the relationship that the county has had with the city, the municipalities, is that increased with this process being in place? Or was it already good?
Yeah, I don't know that it's changed much over time. The last few years, especially, we've tried to reach out a little bit more just because they continue to kind of fall behind from where we're going, and the disparity just grows. You can see, I mean, it's it's very similar to even like kind of the neighboring counties too. There's two large lakes, one with county to the north and one with the county kind of to the west of us, that where you can almost tell where the county boundary is on the lake just by looking at the shorelines. And that's very similar with the city limits too, is where you can kind of tell where the city stops and where it turns into township and county jurisdiction. And they lag behind. And like I said, we do invite them. We do, we have had some attendance at our shoreline workshop. I don't know that the relationships changed very much, and I don't know that the way that they're operating is changing very much. So I think it's an area of opportunity, to the extent that we want to try to stick our fingers into the governance within the city limits or something. That's, there's it's kind of open to, we'll see where that goes.
Sure.
We did have a commissioner kind of mention that too. It said, hey, we should kind of reach out more and have them kind of enforce it a little bit better. And it's tough because it's their jurisdiction, and they operate in the way that they operate. And there's always good room for conversation, and we do what we can, but it's gonna be a challenge moving forward, I think.
Well,
Have any sorry, go ahead.
just my last quick question is, did you guys, in addition to doing outreach with the contractors, did you effort in the area of outreaching to property owners at the same time, so that there was?
Yeah, a fair amount of that comes through lake associations. So, we've had lake associations, send out the invites for the workshop on their websites and the emails. And we've had some of them attend. I've spoken at a number of lake association meetings, so they're all aware of the program and everything. So that's been fairly positive. The thing is on a lot of lake associations, they tend to be just social groups, and they tend to be just a segment of the population that lives on the water body. It may or may not be the majority, or the majority opinion of how things work and operate. So, that's got to be kept in mind too. But, and then in terms of property owners, they talk to each other. When I do site visits, it's not uncommon for them to have, they've even invited their neighbor over to talk with me because they might have a question while I'm out there anyway. So neighbors do talk about their shoreline, and that seems to be a very common method of communication too. So people are aware.
Thanks, Nick.
Okay. Thank you. I've got a few questions. And some of them are kind of similar to what's been asked before, but my first one is how do you handle private citizen do-it-yourself projects? How do they know how to get a permit and so forth?
Sure, that's a good question. So so the process is the same. A lot of times, so I would say a lot of the projects that end up happening within like the first year or 2 or 3 years of the property switching hands. So that's a big segment of kind of the work that's done is somebody buys the property and they want to make it their own. One thing I didn't mention is twice per year, so every 6 months, we send out a mailing to all of the new property owners on shoreland properties. And in that mailing, they get a copy of the shoreland summary. So they see, okay, here's what the shoreland ordinance is, here's what needs a permit, call the county if you have questions. So they get that, so they're aware kind of, or at least they should be aware if they don't throw it away or whatever. But so, and then, yeah, so for DIYers that want to kind of work with it, work through the process themselves, they still meet with me on site. They still need to submit a plan. When they're doing the project, I will oftentimes check in with them or have them kind of send me a picture when they're part of the way through, or maybe I'll do an additional site visit when they're working on the project. So there's a little bit more interaction there. And it's a property owner kind of leading the charge. And I handle 90% of the shoreline permits in the county. A lot of times I'll know, like in the plans, if they know what they're doing or not. And then I can just kind of, determine how much involvement I need to have based on that. So, and that seems to work well. There's, some flexibility there in how I can spend more time or less time on certain sites, just with how it works and how we have a kind of how we can schedule that. So that works really well.
Yeah, we have a problem with DIYers working on the weekend when the office is closed. So they start on Friday night and by Sunday night, it's all done. So how do you handle that if you handle it? And is there anything built into your rules about, requirements for paying a fine or anything like that?
Yep. Yeah. So we have after the fact fees, there's penalties. The nice thing is they can't get grass to grow within 2 days. So it's easy to see that something has happened. And then we'll refer back to aerial footage, aerial photography and things as well. This isn't the slide I wanted. Let's go to here. So here we can we'll zoom in. So you can see our after the fact fees are significantly, they're 3 times the fee. And then if they don't respond to our letters or get, us getting a hold of them, it increases further. And if we don't get any response from them, then it goes to the attorney's office for enforcement action.
So you do enforce, good. Okay.
Yeah. And that tends to work well for us. It doesn't get that far most of the time. There's a couple a year that go that far, but we try to prevent it from getting that far. There's things we can do and just approaches you can take in handling that you got to do it site by site.
Yeah, it's nice to know you have a program for it. That's good. Any issues with the DNR issuing permits directly to citizens and going around your county program?
No, because they can only issue permits for what's in the water. So, and we've got a good relationship with our area hydrologist, so that doesn't usually tend to be a problem. I will say I do have a big beef with the DNR as an agency in terms of what they put on their website and what they allow without a permit. And just generally their level of response or timeliness of response to just general inquiries and or permit issuance. There's a lot of frustrations there that have been voiced by many other LGUs around the state. And I think some things need to get shaken up there a little bit, but it's neither here nor there. We work with what's in our control and we do the best that we can. But in terms of them issuing, in terms of them circumnavigating, like going around us or issuing permits for things that we should be, that doesn't tend to be a problem.
Okay, we've had that problem here. There's a tendency for people to want stones and rocks and, that's really their first preference. Do you have any kind of hierarchy of best practices that you follow?
Yeah,
Or
so
how do you handle that?
yep. So yeah, everybody wants rock. It doesn't help either that there's a lot of farmland in Stearns County, and farmers always have rock to get rid of. And for many decades, people have found that that's a great source. It's oftentimes not too far away from the water where they can get rock and they can stack it on the shore. That's not an ideal scenario. We don't like to see that. Really, we govern that, and essentially rock can only be placed by permit when it's approved by either environmental services or the soil and water conservation district. That gives us a little bit of latitude, and when we're on site, essentially we're really looking at, okay, is there any native vegetation present or not, or is it just grass? And a lot of times stuff like this, if it's depending on the slope and how close it is to where the water levels get, you're going to see eroding, erosion going on. You're going to get bank sloughing. You're going to get things like that. The thing I like to do when we're on site is find an area where maybe there's a lot of tree cover and more natural shoreline and see if that's eroding. And most of the time it's not. And you point that out to the contractors. Contractors get it most of the time, but you point that out to the property owners and you say, hey, look over here. This is not eroding like yours is, and here's why. And you go through that. And if that's the case, if the erosion is essentially caused by the land use practices on the site, then we say, well, we have to stabilize this with other means. We have to look at coconut fiber logs. We have to look at tree revetments. We have to look at live stake plantings. We have to look at other things as opposed to just throwing a bunch of rock down and having it look like this at the end of the project. So that, and again, that's where the technical knowledge comes in. If county staff that are doing the permits for that don't know that or don't have that technical background and don't have that expertise, it's tough because they can't really speak to the alternatives and provide those examples.
So you're always educating. Yeah, so
Right,
you're always
right.
educating, which is a good thing. My last question is, how big is your staff? This is a big program. How many people does it take to implement this?
So I do, so it's pretty much me, and then there's one other staff that does a few permits a year, maybe 10% of the permits per year. And this doesn't even take my full time either. I still do septic inspections at the county as well. So because it's really well established and it flows pretty well, it doesn't take that much staffing to make it happen once it's established. Now, getting to where we're at takes some time. We've been doing this 20 some years for the contractors and the workshop and the relationship, even with the lake associations and property owners, and people know, that takes the time. That's where the time comes in. But on an ongoing kind of administering the program side, one full-time person could do this exclusively, for the whole county. So
Very
yeah.
to hear that. Yeah, I can understand there's a ramp up period, but beyond that, in the maintenance area, if you will, for the program, it's good to know that you can do this with not as many people as you would think. Manager Schmaltz, you had something else you wanted to say?
Yes, I just did one question. Nick, just following up on Manager Anderson's question, how many permits do you do a year?
Yep. Yeah. So that varies a little bit based on the year. We've had as many as, I think we've had 80 permits, something like that. The fewest, it's always over 50, 55, 60, something like that. So that's kind of the range. And then the other thing too, is that doesn't seem like that high of a number. Those are just the permits. Obviously there's more site visits than that. So not every site visit leads to a permit. There's probably, I do about 100 site visits a year. So, little more than half of those usually turn into permits. So that's kind of what that looks like. We do have larger projects that don't fall under a minor permit, go to our county planning commission. There's only a couple of those per year. as well, so.
So
Kinda
the
gives
other
you the
question
number.
I had is you have the contractors checking off their skill levels. Is there any compliance requirements to make sure that they can do all the things they check off?
Not necessarily. Businesses find that if they check something off and it's not something that they can really do, people don't like that. So they tend not to exaggerate their abilities too much. And that's more so just for like kind of the, the native plants and stormwater practices. Obviously at our workshop, they're required to go to the workshop once every 2 years, and we cover a lot of that material there. Now, obviously, it doesn't get to the install side where how competent are they in actually installing something like that. So there's nothing that we really use to vet that. It's kind of up to them. I do tell property owners when they're asking questions about kind of who to go with, I will often tell them, well, ask them, when was the last time they did this kind of project, or have them show you pictures of some of the other work that they've done that incorporated, some stormwater elements or different types of erosion control blanket or, those kinds of things. So, and if they can show the pictures and they can back it up, well, then that obviously shows that they can do it and they're competent in it in some way. If they can't come up with that, well, then obviously that tells you the
So you
answer
men-
right there.
Thank you. You mentioned that some of your commissioners were interested in trying to maybe take over some of the responsibilities that the LGUs have, the cities have on shoreline maintenance. If they're not enforcing their shoreline own ordinances, have you tried just to go in and offer to do that for them and have them give that and turn that responsibility over to the county?
Yeah. So
So
Yeah,
what
so on
happened when
that,
you did that, I guess, is what I'd like to know.
sure. Yeah. So just to clarify a little bit, yeah. So there were one or two commissioners that really weren't interested in taking it over administering their shoreland areas, but were more interested in kind of reaching out and educating and getting the cities to actually administer their own. There were actually a couple cities in the past who had contracted with us to do their shoreland permitting. There was the last one that we had just ended two and a half years ago, something like that, where they took it over themselves again. And then before that, we had another municipality that contracted with us. So we did do some of that. The problem there is they didn't want to have to pay us anything, and when they don't do very much and it's kind of just rubber stamped anyway, it doesn't cost them very much. So it was almost a cost saving measure for them to no longer contract out with the county, to do that. So that's kind of what led to the demise of that contracted work. And then there's two, we've got additional workload that continues to grow. There's more and more development that happens, and the staff doesn't always grow commensurate to that. So, and I mentioned it doesn't take that much time. It doesn't, but you also at the county level, you have to think about from like a commissioner perspective or just budgetary perspective. At some point, you have to think about how much work are you doing that's not necessarily in your jurisdiction, and how much of that do you want to pay for when you're not, obligated by, statute or contract or otherwise to do that. So that's just
Good,
kind
thank you, Nick.
of the way that is.
Good. Any other comments, questions?
One last
Yeah,
question. You have a
Oh.
you have a sheet on here called Annual Shoreline Report. That's done.
Yes.
I wasn't clear, and it's also done from the Minnesota DNR, I think. Is that thing looks more complicated than passing your own driver's test license?
Yeah,
What
that's
the heck? Tell me about that, and who is willing to, is that for a consumer to fill out, or what is that all about, Nick?
yeah, so I'm just gonna pull that up here. I'm guessing that's the DNR report that we
Yeah.
do every
Yes.
year. That's
Right.
yeah, that comes from the DNR. We submit that to the DNR. Is this the page you're talking about?
Right. So you fill
Yeah.
that out based upon all
Yes.
your contacts. Okay. I misunderstood.
Yes.
I thought it was for the consumer or something like that.
No,
Okay.
that's just reports that we have to submit
Okay.
to the DNR every year. And they use that to try to inform their own policy or whatever they say. So yeah, nothing too important there.
Okay, I understand now. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yep.
Thank you. Administrator Kenny.
Madam President, managers, Nick, we've had a lot of, ice heaving going on in Forest Lake here the last couple of weeks. Just wondering if that's something you've been observing there, and then if there's any differentiation between what some of the projects where you've done native plantings and, or is it just, I mean, this stuff is pretty massive here, probably the worst I think most people have seen. In maybe a couple of decades or something.
Sure. Yeah, so with that, there is a provision in our ordinance that allows for kind of ice ridge removal that same year without a permit. We have seen some areas in some years with more ice ridge formation and ice ridge action. Usually it's just a minor permit. It's pretty straightforward where we get contractor come in, pull out material from the ice ridge, regrade it back, put down erosion control blanket, get it seeded, and you're on your way. Obviously, if it's a steeper slope and there's other issues going on, if you got like a big slope, big bluff or something right at the toe, all the way down to the water, there's larger things that can happen there. But we see some of it. We don't see a lot, probably not to the extent that you're seeing it right now from the way you describe it. On stuff like that, really it's about, if you need technical, if it's a very large slope and we need technical assistance or something, we'll lean on the conservation district to kind of get involved. We did have in a subdivision last year, we had a partial bluff failure, potentially due to some stormwater stuff, some stormwater facilities that were not properly installed. There was maybe some linkage there, and we kind of had the conservation district step in and say, hey, here's some things to think about and look at, so we can do that if need be. But most of the time, ice ridge action is just a minor permit with excavation of some material, get it back to a more gradual slope, 3-to-1 slope or flatter, the standard kind of specs, to help reduce some of that ice ridge formation. A lot of times you'll see it where it's too steep at the bank. If people stack rock really steep, ice comes in, shoves the bank more vertical, creates more of an ice ridge. From a water quality perspective, ice ridges aren't a bad thing. Obviously, for people's yards and what they want to see and use to access the water, they don't like it. So, but yeah, it's most of the time a minor permit for us.
But the damage is worse with rocks than it is with native plants, right?
Yeah,
Like,
it can
that-
be. It can be. Yeah. If you stack that rock too steep, it'll push right back into the bank, and it'll just create a very steep bank. I don't really have any good examples from pictures in the slideshow, but let's say you had more of like a wall or rock that was stacked a lot steeper at the bank or at the shoreline. That ice is just going to hit that and push the rock and dirt upward. If you can get it at a more gradual slope, even though this isn't a good example where it's just all rock, this is more gradual where it's going to ride up over the top a little bit easier rather than shove it right into the bank. So,
Okay. Well, very good. Any final comments or questions? We need to move on to the rest of the agenda. This is a very important topic for us, Nick. So thank you so much for coming. And,
yeah, absolutely.
I'm sure we'll be in touch as we develop our own program. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, moving on to B, Washington County Cooperative Weed Management Area.
Madam President, managers, so the district has participated or been a partner with this, at least have some communication about it in 2020. Just trying to find the other motion, but do want to just revise the motion on this if there's no particular questions, but that it would be that the motion would be something more along the line, moves to authorize the administrator to participate or authorize the administrator to, work with the county in this particular, cooperative weed management.
That's not what I'm seeing in the motion though.
No, I know, but, just, recommendation, because I have recommended, it should be to authorize rather than moves to recommend. It should be authorize the administrator. See if we can,
Well, should we just take out staff work with local partners and say administrator?
sure.
Because the district's gonna participate, you're gonna be the lead, right? So. Okay, I'm gonna make the motion, because I have some language in mind, tell me if this works. I move to recommend that the CLFLWD participate in the Washington County CWMA under the direction of the administrator and staff, working with local partners related to work performed under this agreement. Does that sound good?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Is there a second? Is there a second on the motion?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Manager Schmalz. Any further discussion?
Yes, I have a couple questions. Have we been participating in this, or is this the first time you're joining?
So I was trying to find the motion on it in the past, but I have some emails and the district staff have been participating in it since 2020. So,
Okay,
but I presume we approved, this was brought forth and approved in that timeframe.
There's no cost to it, it appears, correct?
Correct,
Staff
you know,
time?
one of the things is for us to be aware of when the county is doing any terrestrial invasive species work
Sure.
within the district.
Mhm.
So that's one of the main benefits that I could see out of it.
Yeah, I agree.
Mike,
Okay,
do
any
you,
further questions?
yeah, I
Go
got a
ahead.
couple questions here, President Anderson. Appendix A, there's a long list of people. Are all these members, or are these people they're trying to recruit?
I think the entities that were involved previously, let me see if there's a reference to it.
I mean, it appears like they own, I mean, like, this is a big thing and everybody's joined, but I wonder if that's really true, or these are just the candidates that could join. Okay, we don't have to have an answer on that right now. The other thing, and I'm asking these questions because I've never seen this contract before, and a couple of things bother me in it. Item D, under statement of work, says that they have the right to administer any grants that come into their, does that mean come into their organization or come into any member's organization? It can be interpreted that if we get a grant, they have the right to administer that grant. It seems to me, from a legal aspect. And then the other question that concerns me is there's no lake associations mentioned here. And the third thing is that this seems to me to be creating another structure that's really, there may be some value in it, but it's duplicating most of the work is done by within the watershed district where the lakes are. And it's mostly done between the watershed district and the lake association, and in some cases, and like ours, the city. So, you know, we've got this all going together. If Washington County is going to start running their grants through the people that are members of this, is this going to affect the lake association's ability to get grants from Washington County, or even our ability to get money from Washington County? But I guess it hasn't so far. Is that correct, Mike? We haven't seen anything like that happen so far.
Correct, and this is not new, and it's something that, that is really brought or encouraged by the Minnesota Department of Agriculture. There was, I think it's It previously was something of, just a weed ordinance, if you recall, a lot of townships, you know, there was required that they try to. Yeah, address or manage noxious weeds. But this has been expanded. So. It does say that the, Appendix A is, among the Washington County Cooperative Weed Management Area Partners, so these are the partners, presumably intending to participate in this, so.
All right, I
It's
guess, is there
for-
any reason why we can't ask our local lake associations to be aware of this organization and join? Because, for example, Jerry Gruntner from Forest Lake Association has already won 2 grants this year from the county. So they should be part of that, I would think. But I'll ask Jerry to call him and see what he wants to do with it.
Manager
Right, 'cause
Schmaltz,
they do
I may
that-
have some additional information that might be of use for the board managers.
Yeah, please, go ahead.
Just to provide a little context here. So this is the agreement initially in 2020. We, as Administrator Kinney mentioned, I don't know what the result of that was. This is the second 5-year MOU that this entity is operating under. And I spoke with the staff who was kind of the lead for this from Washington Conservation District. And the Appendix A is the current list of, I guess, partners that they have reached out to. I would say that in my experience, about half of those have been participants at the annual meeting. And then in response to Manager Schmaltz's questions, the focus of this is not limited to terrestrial species, but the focus is the emphasis is greatly on terrestrial species. That may provide some of the context around not seeing lake associations. I don't know in my experience that they couldn't be invited, but I would think that may be why they have not been invited, is the focus on terrestrial. And then one more note on Washington Conservation District serving as the fiscal agent. This is a Bowser program. The Cooperative Weed Management Area is a Bowser program. And under that framework as it exists, there are grants available to cooperative weed management areas, and watershed districts are not allowed to directly apply for those grants. We have to do so in partnership with the conservation district, just to provide some context for that information.
That's quite helpful because I was looking at this primarily from a perspective of water issues. So thank you, Hayden.
The only comment I have is, the watershed district is mentioned in here, obviously as a participant, but it also says it's for Washington County. Only it doesn't mention, like in our case, that we have some area outside of Washington County. So I would like to get that clarified so that it encompasses our entire district. This is like our boat launch monitoring program. Started out in Chisago County, they brought it to us and obviously included Forest Lake because they wanted it to be a district-wide program. So it's kind of like that, where you've got to make some allowances to go beyond this clear pointed language about Washington County only.
Madam President, is, and maybe Aiden and I could work on this, but we may want to just check with Chisago County to see if they're proposing to do something similar, because we know that they have, with that Phragmites, they have a major issue there, so they may have a similar program
Yeah.
that we've currently not been invited to.
It's possible, but if they don't, then we need to make sure that we can be included in this one. So the whole entity of our association, our district, I mean, is covered. It's happened in the past, you know, the other way and for some other things, so I don't think it's gonna be that big of an issue. I like the concept of having a county-wide approach to this, because it doesn't help to do it in one area and then not have it done in the others. They're just gonna spread. So I think that concept is really good. So if we can amend the motion, just to allow staff to check into, having the entire district covered by this agreement, that's great. And or looking into Chisago County, if they have a countywide program that we could join.
Manager Anderson, I have more information. I can confirm that
Yeah.
Chisago County does have a cooperative weed management area. I have
Okay.
not engaged with that entity in the past,
Mhm.
and we have not been invited. Doesn't mean it's
Mhm.
not active, so we can certainly reach out. I just want to confirm that that entity does exist right now.
Good, all right.
Aiden has the answers.
Yes, he does. Thank you. My amendment's not needed. We'll check into it
Yes.
on Chisago County side.
So-
Okay, any further comments or questions? And we have a motion and a second.
Right.
Roll call, please.
Manager Lowe,
He said aye.
oh, okay, Manager Schmaltz,
Aye.
Manager Baki,
Aye.
President Anderson.
Aye. Thank you. Motion carries unanimously. Next item is North Shore Circle Park Agreement.
Madam President, managers, this is, maybe another one that I'll turn over to Aiden. He's been leading, this particular item, for the district. And I know we've heard about it before, but I think I'll just let him go through it again.
All right, Aiden, thank you.
All right, thank you, Minister Kinney. And President Managers, the memorandum here lays out some of the background. We received a CPL grant back in 2024 for North Shore Circle Park, and we've been working with the Conservation District on design work in the city on this agreement basically since the summer. So the agreement is ready. We're all very excited. This is laid out, attached to the memo there. And then also attached to the agreement is the plans for the North Shore Circle Park shoreline restoration for you to reference as you'd like. And so following the board's decision here, the city council will be receiving this agreement later this month.
Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion to move to authorize the board president to execute the North Shore Circle Park agreement.
I'll second.
Thank you. Thank you, Manager Lowe, Manager Schmaltz. Any further questions or concerns? Okay, a roll call, please.
Wait,
Manager Lowe.
wait, hold on. I got a
Oh.
couple questions, please.
Okay, sure.
This mainly to kind of learn a little more about what might happen on the North Shore project. This was done last summer, and this is going to be a continuation. The rest of Hayward Avenue is going to be done, plus of all of North Shore Drive. So that's a holding pond. Is that a holding pond for stormwater in the middle of the park? Is that correct, Aiden?
That is correct. Yep, there's a stormwater feature there on the park.
Where does that water come from?
That's a great question.
I mean, I think it comes from all along the roadside, doesn't it? Because they were putting in pipes to run it down there, I think.
I'm trying to think back. It certainly captures surface flow from the road. And I'm trying to think back if I had recalled any subsurface delivery to that stormwater feature, and I can't recall. So at minimum, it's treating runoff from the road system there, but it may have an additional input to it I'm not aware of.
Okay, the other question, do you know whether, or does Mike know whether this has been an overlay job as they're proposing for North Shore Trail? Or was there actually more deeper removing and rebuilding of the road? And maybe Chris can answer that question since you lived through it all last summer. Do you, in other words, are they going to do, did they do the same thing here as they're going to do on North Shore Trail, or was more done here that's not going to be done on North Shore Trail?
Madam President, managers, so that, right, so this was permitted, and, you know, Mike Sandiger's on here, he could probably, probably has more specifics on it, but as I recall, there was more done, You'll also remember, we took some of that donated property from, past member Jackie McNamara, and we did some storage there. But in terms of the specifics, maybe, Mike Sandiger, do you have any more to add to that question?
The project on North Shore Circle Trail was more intense than the proposed project. So we would expect to see less impacts based on the preliminary plans we received today, along the proposed North Shore Trail project.
So one of the things we need to do, Mike, at least through talking to Mike now, Mike Kinney, is actually point out the differences and what impact does that have on improving the water quality? In other words, what are we giving up by what they're doing now? Because if we're going to make an argument on this, we have to know what could be done and whether it's worth it or not to get other people, get the public more involved to support what should be done for the water quality and containing salt, et cetera, et cetera. So that's why I asked the question. So we should look at this, an example, and ask them why they're not doing the same thing, because it's better for the lake, and they've already done it once. So we have to begin to prepare some arguments here, and this would be a good one to start with, I think. Not that we have to do it tonight, obviously, but I think it's an opportunity for us.
Do we have our engineers involved in this?
In
So-
which part?
The oversight,
project?
yeah.
Yes, right, Aiden's been involved, but yes, we've had DUR review it, yes.
Okay, so are they here tonight? Can they talk about this?
I don't think we have to
From your
cover it
perspective?
tonight. Just have to get it done.
Well, that's what the motion's all about. Moves to authorize the board president to execute the agreement. So. we're
Madam
moving
President?
Forward with this motion. And if
Well-
you've got concerns about what the project's going to do, its outcome, then we need to have our engineers weigh in on that.
No, the outcome is already, I mean, I understand what's happening here. I'm not asking for more to be done here. I'm just asking whether or not the same type of level of due diligence is going to be done for the 6 miles that's going to be done this summer. This one's all done inside. We just have to vote yes on it. I'm ready to do that right now, but
Well, are
I'm
they-
just trying to learn from this one and compare to
Those two
why they're
parts.
shortchanging North Shore Trail.
Madam President, so Manager Schmaltz is asking from the perspective of, since there's a stormwater feature within the park, you know, that's reflective of the fact that the project that was done a couple of years ago triggered some of the stormwater, or triggered the stormwater rule. So there was the opportunity to treat some of the water in that vicinity,
Mhm.
and this is sized appropriately. So the city is taking advantage of the property that they own for some of the treatment. Manager Schmaltz is asking the question more about this, the design and the information we received today about the remaining portion of the main portion of North Shore Circle, or North Shore Trail rather. And whether or not then, you know, if these were comparable, but they're not, because this area here was done, you know, more in depth. They were,
Mhm.
you know, addressing more of the road bed and doing some other things from a longer perspective to address it, but then it also triggered the stormwater rule. And we were able to capture it through, in this location for.
So this project, we know, that we don't have any questions about it.
Correct.
It's ready to move. We've got a grant.
Yep.
So we don't have to bring in that other discussion right now.
No, we don't.
On the rest of the road. So, yeah, so let's just move on this one, okay? So we've
Madam
got, do we have a?
Madam President,
Yes.
I just had
Yes.
2 quick questions. Was that stormwater treatment added in when the circle was replaced, or did that exist prior to the installation of the new
Roadbed?
no, the new pipe, the sanitary piping that was put in?
It was put in at the same time,
Okay, so it's a new treatment.
correct?
Okay, and what is the amount of the grant that was received? I didn't see anywhere the project,
Yeah, I'd have to double check I want to say it was approximately $30,000.
Okay. Thank you.
And what portion of the cost does that provide? Do you know, of the total project?
That will cover roughly the entire, that will cover the entire project cost, plus our match contribution, which will be staff time.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
I think this is a great project because it's going to be a showcase for all the things we want to do along the shoreline. People can come, it's a park, they can walk down and look at it. It's a wonderful example. I hope we can do the same thing when they rebuild the city shoreline in the park. And we can get 150 feet there maybe to do something over there also. So great
Yeah.
work. This is going to be I was really impressed with the photographs and everything else and how this thing was put together. So it's going to be a
And
great
we-
reference point for us. Thank you, staff.
Yeah, one
And
of
EOR
several.
too.
No, one of several examples like this that we have with the city of Forest Lake and Lake Forest. Okay, so we've got a motion second. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Manager Lowe,
Enthusiastically, aye.
Manager Schmaltz,
Aye.
Manager Baki,
Aye.
President Anderson.
Aye. Wonderful. Moving on to D, 2025 Forest Lake Cooperative Aquatic Invasive Species Agreement.
Sure. So, Madam President, managers, well, maybe I'll let Mike Sandiger kind of go over this. He's now leading this program for the district.
All right,
Thank you, President. If approved, the agreement would be the fourth season of the partnership between the City of Forest Lake, the Forest Lake Lake Association, and the Watershed District. There were no substantial changes to this agreement outside of some dates and title changes and some minor grammatical changes. So the agreement would still keep that combined total of $150,000 with the city and Comfort Lake both agreeing to 42.5%. And the Forest Lake Lake Association agreeing to 15%. I guess I would have to ask Manager Schmaltz if the Forest Lake Lake Association approved the agreement at their last meeting. I believe it was on the agenda. But the city has also expressed support to continue the agreement.
I'm sure I was not at the meeting because we had a strategy meeting that night for the Watershed District, but I'm sure they did approve it because we were the ones that formed the original contract. Jerry Gruntner did that work many years ago. So I'm sure they approved it.
All right. Yeah, I think the main question was who was gonna sign the agreement for the Lake Association.
I think that the meeting before they voted to have Jerry do it. Because he's
Okay.
with it the whole time.
So I'm available if any of the managers have any additional questions.
okay, are there any further questions or comments? Hearing none, roll call, please.
All right, Manager Lowe,
Did we have a motion and a second on this?
oh, sorry, I was in that.
Oh, yeah, I thought we did, but we may not have. All right,
Oh, we would, yeah.
no, not yet. I'm moving
I'll-
ahead too quickly. All right,
I'll-
who's gonna make the motion?
I'll move to authorize the district administrator to execute the 2025 funding support agreement for AIS and lake management activities on Forest Lake on advice of council and with any final non-substantive changes.
I'll
Thank
second.
you.
I'll
Who is
second.
that? Manager Schmaltz?
Yes, I'll second it.
All right, thank you. We have a motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
All right, Manager Lowe,
Aye.
Manager Schmaltz,
Aye.
Manager Baki,
Aye.
President Anderson.
Aye. Thank you. Motion passes. E, Minnesota Watersheds 2025 delegate appointment.
Madam President, managers, the Minnesota Watersheds is proposing to have an additional meeting on Friday, March 21st. Just a reminder that the legislative session meeting is next week, Wednesday, and there's both meetings in the afternoon, the reception in the evening. We were able to coordinate with Tori, she can get the board set up, but for this, this is similar to the annual meeting that we have in December. And normally the month before, in November, we'll appoint delegates, so this is simply doing that at this time. And then we could submit it for any of the managers that are able to attend.
Yeah, and it's to approve rules that will change the way, really the timing of how we do our legislative suggestions for
Resolution.
the resolutions, yes, but those can be used for operational issues as well, or working with agencies. It's not just legislative resolutions. But anyway, so the Minnesota Watershed Board has reconfigured this with help from Chuck's firm. And so the point is to get us moving earlier in the year on what we want to accomplish so that we actually have time to do some one-on-one discussions with our representatives in the fall. So so that's really what it's all about, so that this major change in how we've operated on that realm anyway can be taken care of. So March 21st, as Mike said, is the date for that meeting. We just have to appoint representatives as delegates and then an alternate.
What is the time and location?
It's going to be in Waite Park, Minnesota by St. Cloud.
And the time?
I didn't write that
I
down.
don't think it's been decided yet. They said time and date.
Oh, that's right.
Time to follow.
The location has been named, but not the time and date yet.
Okay.
Or
Or the date has, but not the time. Sorry. Okay, so we can think about this. We've got some time, I think, right? So the next meeting, if you want to think about it, and then we could table this and name the delegates at our next meeting. Okay? Does that sound good?
Sounds
Did
good.
she need it before then? That gives them time to think about it. All right, I'm going to table this motion and item until the next meeting. I don't think we need a second for that. Is that right, Chuck?
That's correct. It's just consensus to move the matter to the next meeting.
Okay, so without objection, I will table this item until the next meeting. Hearing no objection, item is tabled. Okay, next old business, A, 2024 Education and Outreach Year-End Summary.
Were we adding the street, these North Shore streets to letter F there? Or did we move up to old business? The North Shore Trail.
Oh, yeah, that's right. We did add an item. Thank you, Tori. We added item F. And that was on the, I think it was the road project,
Mhm.
right? On North Shore Trail?
Yes.
Okay, do you want to talk to that, Mike, or introduce it, or?
I'll just introduce it, Madam President. So,
Okay.
We had heard previously last year, while Manager Smoltz had made us aware of this potential project, but we had not seen anything, and of course, up until just last week, we've not had a coordination meeting with the city for 5 or 6 years, but Mike Sandiger and Greg Grasky were at a meeting today on this particular project, and we received that those plan sets, but so maybe Mike can give a little bit of a update, if you will, on the city's plans. And then we can perhaps get some direction from the board as to how we might want to proceed, because the city is holding a meeting next week on this, a public meeting on this road, very important road project for the city. And I feel like we're late to the table in terms of offering any suggestions on design.
Yeah, sure. I can give a broad overview of what the project looks like. And if there's any engineering specific questions, maybe Ann can answer them. If she had a chance to discuss it with Greg. So the city is planning on doing pretty much the whole north side of the lake for North Shore Trail. They want to do the project in 2025. It would be in 8 phases, and their goal is to remain underneath our stormwater triggers for newer replaced impervious surfaces. They need to conduct some additional calculations after our meeting today to determine whether or not they will meet those thresholds. Greg and I communicated to the city staff present that this project's very important to, the health of Forest Lake and to our board members, and that we would be happy to collaborate in any possible way. We ask that the city engineers look at additional opportunities, such as dead end streets like on North Shore Circle, and then also look at potential other places to store water. As Mike Kinney said, we just received the project plan, so we're kind of in an early review phase right now. I'll try to answer any questions that the president or managers have.
Well, I have a question. These things don't just pop up like this, so I thought we had regular meetings with our partners, our community partners. How come this hasn't come up? I mean, was this really a surprise attack?
It was a surprise attack for us. So the city of Forest Lake, we had previously had monthly engineering meetings with them. And they requested that, or they stated that the amount of time they were spending on those meetings was too much. So we kind of were exploring alternative options. And the one we landed on was to have quarterly meetings like we do for the city of Scandia and city of Wyoming. And it just took a while for the city to get those scheduled. And as you said, this project kind of came as a surprise to both district staff and EOR staff. It's a little bit, we've worked with the engineers, the Forest Lake engineers on the Scandia. They're also the city of Scandia engineers, and we are able to look at the road projects with the city of Scandia, 4 or 5 years out. So I guess we're trying to rebuild that relationship with the city to ensure that this type of issue doesn't come up again, where we're kind of blindsided by this very large and important road project.
I just have one other question, and then I'll ask the board for their input. But do we have the mapping of the current stormwater layout in that area?
EOR should, I believe. It would have been part of the stormwater mapping project or the floodplain mapping project.
Okay.
I do know that it's rather limited on what stormwater infrastructure is there now. There is some, but not a lot.
Well, my inclination is that we have to get a report from our engineers on exactly what's there. and what their recommendations are to protect Forest Lake and those wetlands also on the other side, because that all goes toward Little Comfort. So we need to be certain on what we're dealing with here.
Yep,
before we start
absolutely.
Raising a ruckus, so we can quantify it with science on what the damage is, or maybe it'll correct that damage, I don't know. But we need more than just a conversation on it.
Yep, totally agreed. Madam President, we have asked EOR to look into stormwater options. And now that they have the plan set, they'll be able to, start diving into it and quantifying things.
Okay, that's good to know. Any other questions, concerns from board members?
Madam President,
Yes, Manager Lowe?
I just want to share my displeasure with the city. I know they're not represented here, but it just seems a bit ridiculous that they're going to do 6 miles of road work on a road that is up against Forest Lake, and they feel like they don't need to get us some information on this ahead of time. It just speaks to me about the the level of relationship that we have with the city, and we have a lot of work to do in that area, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's pretty clear. Anyone else?
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Holden.
I'm just wondering, Mike, you referenced they're designed to stay under our permitting threshold, which is 5,000 square feet of new or reconstructed surface. So that doesn't, I'm wondering how that's being navigated. If it's a
Please
large
correct me
project.
please correct me if I'm wrong, Ann, but it's not considered reconstructed unless they disturb the native soil, which the road work they're planning on doing would not do that. The small amount that they're trying to keep under that amount would be new curb along the street. So the amount of new curb they would try to keep under our threshold.
Okay, I heard you reference they're phasing it. I wanted it to be clear that they're not able to segment the project.
Yeah, let me be a little more clear. The 8 phases is how they're planning on going about the construction. So doing work on 1/8 of the permitted project at a time. So not tearing up the whole road at once and trying to redo that entire 6 miles. Instead, they're going to do about 0.75 miles at a time of work.
All right, but the permit threshold in our rules is the total of the entire project, just so we're
Yeah.
clear on that.
Yeah.
All right.
Say, Chris,
So they
I
can't-
have a question
ahead.
for Chris.
Go ahead, Manager Smalls.
Yeah, Chris, are you still there?
Of course.
Yeah, okay. You lived through this last summer. How dusty was it down there during the whole summer? If they're not touching any dirt, I remember you complaining about this. That's why I'm asking you the question. It's going to be in front of my yard the rest of this summer. And I think there was a lot of dust. So when they take up the blacktop, they have to disturb the soil below it, don't they?
Well, our project was different because they were replacing the sanitary sewer system, and it sounds like this is just milling down the road to not disturb the ground underneath to avoid triggering our rules. It sounds like, but the dust was awful. I'm very annoyed that I'm hearing that they're going to do it up on North Shore Trail, because it's a huge inconvenience. I'm hoping that I'll be able to access the road going down 97 and coming back the other way if they're working on it. But
Right.
yeah, I mean, it creates a huge mess.
Well, I think the other question too is that they are going to put in a new storm sewer, as I read the letter, from 233rd Street up to Hayward Avenue. So that whole strip is within 50 feet of the water, and it's got a 45-degree slope directly to the lake. So that certainly should be and that's gotta be more than 5,000 square feet disturbance, I would think. So maybe ERS needs to take a look at that also.
Yep, we're waiting on final plans from the city as well.
Okay,
Yep.
Okay, so this was just information only. We don't need to make a vote tonight, correct? And I think it's clear that we all want more information and an engineer, civil engineer to weigh in on this as well. The curb, was it curb and gutter, both, or just curb? That I heard earlier.
There's an existing gutter that they would be putting curb onto.
Okay, okay. All right. So anyway, all those impacts, we have to get our scientists together and give us some real answers. Okay.
well, I have a suggestion to make. The meeting is on Tuesday. So we can't do too much to get ready, but we need to first of all find out if that's going to be an opportunity to present information, or whether, as Mike said, are we just going to walk around and look at drawings? And then I think we should have a special meeting either tomorrow or Monday early. And I can send you the questions tomorrow morning that I think we have to get ready for, because if we're going to delay this or have any influence on it, we're going to have to get the Forest Lake Association members to fill their meeting room when they have the next meeting on this whole thing. And that'll change some attitudes, but we got to give the Lake Association some information to work with, like I'm talking about. So I think the first thing is to find out what kind of meeting are we do we have a chance to speak at that meeting coming up Tuesday or not? And then I guess my other questions can be, I can send to you in a letter, but we have to get ready for this meeting and for subsequent meetings also. So I don't know whether we need maybe a chance to get together on Monday, a couple of us, to work out a strategy here. I'm asking the question from the board, because I don't think we want to be not prepared for that meeting and have them just roll over us and go forward.
Well, what information do we have right now? We have very little information. We know they're going to resurface the road. They don't want to take it down. They're just putting a new layer on the top, which isn't going to last very long. So they're going to have to come back in a few years and do something a little bit more serious. But
Oh, for example,
the first thing, Steve, is whatever the engineers that we hire to look over projects like this, if they can do some type of short memo for you folks that are going to go to that information meeting, hell, I might even go to it. But you've got to understand what the project is. Right now, there's hardly any detail on what the project is going to be and what impact it has for Forest Lake and the wetlands on the other side. I mean, this is a very sensitive area, so.
The questions I have will bring that out from the
I'm
engineers.
sure it will.
So
But our
like,
engineers might be able to give you ammunition to use. That's what I'm saying.
Can we slope the road away from the lake, for example? If it's sloped towards the lake, all that salt and water runs into the lake. If we slope it the other way, we can do a better job managing that water that flows to the gutter, for example.
I think it's
a bunch
sloped
of
right
questions
now toward the wetlands
Yeah.
on the other side. It's not the lake side. If you go down that road, you can feel it on the car. So it's sloped
Okay.
toward the wetlands.
For example, they just put new blacktop on that road. That's going to emit a large amount of pollution, solvents and oil, and we should be able to measure how much that is and how many pounds goes into the lake over the next 3 years until that's finally sucked out of the blacktop, just in time to redo it again.
Yeah.
So
Well, I think we're all saying the same thing,
Okay.
but getting ready for this meeting is the urgent thing right now. And we've got to get some data from the engineers on what you can say at that meeting that makes some scientific sense.
is
Not
there a
just an
chance
opinion.
we could meet tomorrow for a half hour, an hour, just to frame up some questions?
Who's with us from EOR? I
Madam
can't see
President,
everybody.
I'm present.
Oh, good, wonderful. Weigh in, please.
We can certainly pull together as much information as we have. We just don't have very much that they've submitted as final. But President Schmaltz has sent us his questions and we can respond to those.
I haven't sent
Good.
them yet. I will send them, but I would like to sit down and discuss them with you a little bit because brainstorming together, we might come up with some other ideas.
Okay,
Again, this
I'll
is
look at the
useful
schedules.
information for the Lake Association because they're not going to listen to us. I'll guarantee you that. They're going to listen to 80 people that fill up a room that's built for 50. We've done this in the past and it was very effective in getting the attention of the city. So, but we have to have information that makes sense and that the Lake Association understands and can present. And we'll be on our way, but that's really what our goal is. So if we can get together tomorrow or Monday morning, not that we're going to have everything ready for Tuesday, I understand that, but I think we need to at least frame up what we can go after and what makes sense. The other question is it really worth the cost value dollars to do this in some water projects? We don't always do projects if they go over $1,000 a pound. So are we asking the city to do something we may not do ourselves? So that's the other question we got to ask ourselves. So
That's why the engineers are involved. I'm gonna make a motion to permit the parties involved, certainly Manager Schmalz, you and Manager Loth, to meet with staff and the engineers to prepare some documents for, what did you say, Tuesday? The Tuesday night's meeting, public meeting in Forest Lake on this road project. That's my motion.
I'll
second?
second the motion.
Thank you. Any further talk, discussion? Roll call, please.
All right, Manager Lowe,
Aye.
Manager Schmaltz,
Aye.
Manager Baki,
Aye.
President Anderson.
Aye. Thank you. Motion
Pat?
carries.
And
Madam
again, I
Chair.
don't expect to have all the answers by Tuesday. I'm not trying to put pressure on staff. I just want to frame up what our options are. Some of the information we'll have some other hypotheses we might offer that may not be real or not, but then we can work towards those goals in the next several weeks as things move on their side as well as it moves on our side. For a future meeting, that would be the showdown meeting.
If we get it from EOR, they're going to give us not fantasy, but factual data on what could happen. And that's really what you need going forward, but you know that. So let's move on.
Madam
Thank
Chair?
you.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
is there a need for another motion to clarify who will be speaking Tuesday evening and whether they will be speaking on behalf of the board?
no, I don't think so. I think I mentioned Steve Schmalz and Manager Loth. They're from that area, right where this project's going to be. And do you think we need to do that? I don't think so.
Well, I think
Well,
he's talking about the meeting with the city, and I think it puts us in an awkward position, myself and Manager Loth, to speak on behalf of the watershed district. That's why we want the Lake Association. Any heavy pushing or pulling that has to be done, or heavy lifting, as I say, is going to be done by the Lake Association. So if I speak there, I would probably speak as representing the Lake Association. And Manager Anderson perhaps might, as president, officially maybe provide some comments from the watershed.
Well, I'm happy to do that, but then include me on this meeting with EOR, so I get the data, right?
Yeah, we'll get you the data for sure. No doubt about that.
Okay, very
Yep.
good.
Thank you.
So Chuck,
Just
since the president has the position of speaking to the public, do we need to have another motion?
You do not need a motion for Tuesday evening because, as you say, the president has that authority. But then my concern is, Manager Anderson, if you were to meet as well with Manager Schmaltz and Loth and EOR, that would be a quorum.
Oh, yeah.
So
You're right.
so I would suggest, if it's satisfactory to you, to not meet with EOR, but subsequently to coordinate with Manager Schmaltz with what is developed from that meeting so that you're prepared to speak Tuesday evening as you wish.
Yeah, it's fine.
Madam
Good
President,
suggestion.
I'm sorry?
Madam President, Manager Lowe.
Yes, please, Manager Lowe, go ahead.
Can I defer my participation to you so that you are involved as the president, so you can therefore speak on behalf of the watershed fully informed without having us to notice another meeting?
Yeah, that's fine, if you're okay with that.
Yeah, well,
I
Chris
am
is,
fine with that.
yeah.
All
Chris is
right,
a full-time
sounds good.
job, so it's hard to get away from work.
Then let's change the motion to be Manager Schmalz and myself to attend the meeting with EOR to gather the data that we need to present at the meeting, the public information meeting on Tuesday. Okay? That's a new motion, so the other motion's gone. This is the new motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Manager Lowe,
Aye.
Manager Schmaltz,
Aye.
Manager Baki,
Aye.
President Anderson.
Aye. Okay, I think we're done on that, and we'll coordinate on the next week later on. Okay, old business. Thank you, Tori, for reminding us to deal with that. Old business A, 2024 education and outreach year-end summary.
And President, I'll let Adam take this one away.
Okay, all yours, Adam.
Thank you, Madam President, managers. In last month's board meeting packet, you had the draft of the 2024 education outreach year-end summary. We were looking for comments. I didn't hear any, so we have it in this board packet, and we pre-recorded a video. So I'll entertain any comments or questions, anything now.
The
President
only comment I
Anderson?
have is that you've done a great job, so congratulations on that. Yes, Manager Baki, please.
Yes, Adam, thank you for the videos. I appreciate the videos. It gives us an opportunity to watch it before the board meeting, and your videos that you provided, I think there were 2 of them, right? Were answered all my questions, so thank you for that.
Yeah, I just want to comment. I've read it and I've listened to the video also, and I think it's an excellent job, as Manager Anderson said. I love your objectives. They're specific, they're measurable, and I think it's just a very strong program in terms of the seminars and that you're putting on and the other plans you've got in place. So, especially this past year, since you've been relatively new here, so it's great to see. So we appreciate that, and thanks for the effort.
Mhm.
Thank you for the feedback.
What about
Any other
25,
comments?
2025?
Well, let's do this one first.
Oh, that's right, we gotta do them.
Any other comments? Okay, if not, is there a motion to accept the report?
I move that we accept the report as presented, both paper-wise as well as through the video.
Okay, and that's the 2024 education and outreach year-end summary, correct?
Correct.
All right, very good. Is there a second?
I will second that.
All right, thank you, Manager Baki. Tori, roll call.
Manager Lowe,
Aye.
Manager Schmaltz,
Aye.
Manager Baki,
Aye.
President Anderson.
Aye. Unanimous, it's passed. Thank you. On to the next item, which is the 2025 education and outreach implementation plan.
And Madam President, managers, similar on this one. You had the draft in last month's, and then again in this month's, and then we did a video for it as well. So questions, comments?
It looks like another really good plan, and I wish you well. And we look forward to having these reports, maybe at our month end meetings, the second meeting, on just how things for that quarter or that month has gone. So we enjoy those updates just to see how they're working. Thank you.
President Anderson?
Yes, who was first there? Manager Lowe? Is that you? No? Manager Baki? Okay, thank you.
That's me. Was there anything included in the 2025 plan for signage? I know we had discussed that, and I don't know if I saw anything regarding that.
Manager Baki, yes, there is. We're gonna look at signage on priority projects, kind of bang for your buck, which ones are high priority, highly visible. And then we're also going to look at the boundary signage as well. What, we've got some no's on that, but what else, who else can we communicate with? So both aspects, the project signage and the boundary signage we're gonna work on.
When you say boundary signage, does that mean the boundaries of our watershed district?
Correct.
So as you enter, you would see you are now entering the Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed District.
Manager Baki, correct. We've got, some pushback from DOT and other entities about not putting those in the road right away. So where else can we put them, working with maybe some private landowners, what the next step of that would be?
Great, thank you.
Madam President,
Yes, Manager Logue.
Adam, can you see if you can reach out to, whichever watershed is gonna be on France Avenue in Edina? Because I know they have signs there, and I've seen signs other places, so I'd like to know how they got cooperation from DOT there, but we're getting a roadblock.
Yeah, Manager Loth, I live in Richfield. Across the street from us is Minnehaha Watershed, and those signs are all over in Richfield. So yeah, I can communicate with some of those other entities. They're even on Portland Avenue, which is a county road. So I'll definitely follow up some other watersheds.
Thank you, sir.
The only
I just
question I
wanna-
have I'm sorry, Manager Schmalz, I
Had
didn't see
my
your hand.
up.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
okay. I'm trying to use my hand as much as possible.
Yeah.
So again, good job on this. I think this is going to be especially helpful, especially what you did last year and then the plan for this year. When our new PR firm comes on board, they've got something to work with. And so they don't have to reinvent the wheel on a lot of this stuff. So hopefully we get them spinning their wheels on looking at what else they can do for us. So that's great. Thank you, Adam. It'll be a great base to work from.
Yeah, that was going to be my question as well, is just an update, not tonight, but on where we're at with hiring that type of communication firm and getting some input, with their experience doing these types of things. So that would be helpful. And don't answer it tonight, but maybe you can give me a call, sometime and let me know where we're at with that. Okay? All right, very good. I think there's no more discussion, so is there a motion? I should have done that first. Do we have a motion in second?
I'll move to accept the 2025 communication and outreach plan as presented in Adam's report and in his presentation.
Thank you. Sarah, is there a second?
I will second that motion.
Thank you, Manager Baki.
All right, Manager Logue.
Aye.
Manager Schmaltz.
Aye.
Manager Bachman.
Aye.
President Anderson.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Next item is the Heath Iron Enhanced Sand Filter Acquisition Budget Transfer.
Madam President, managers, we have just recently discussed this topic and just trying to complete one of the things we found necessary was to complete this transfer so we could do the acquisition based off the direction from the board at the last meeting.
Okay. I will move to amend the 2025 budget for account 6-000-G Heath Avenue Iron Enhanced Sand Filter to $130,000 and to transfer $130,000 from account 000-2900 fund balance to account 6-000-G. And I'll need a second for that. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Manager Schmaltz.
Yep, thank you, Manager Schmaltz. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, roll call, please.
Manager Logue.
Aye.
Manager Schmaltz,
Aye.
Manager Baki,
Aye.
President Anderson.
Aye. Okay, thank you. Next, item 5, program project update. A is the project update.
Madam President, managers, Blaine Annikers, in the meeting here this evening, and they'll go through these.
Okay, it's all yours, Blaine.
Madam President, managers, just wanted to give you a quick project update, similar to what you saw last board meeting, first board meeting of the month. We're making progress on the Heath Avenue Iron Hand sand filter, working to acquire that property and continue that project moving forward. Also been working on a few other projects, the North Shore Circle project, which Aiden spoke to earlier, and then also some agriculture improvements on the July Avenue tributary to School Lake. Not a whole lot has moved here on these projects since the last time you've seen the project update slides, but I'll be happy to answer any questions that you all might have.
President Anderson?
Yes, Manager Baki.
Once again, I'd like to thank the staff for putting together a video. Blaine, you provided a lot of good detailed information for us. I like the photos too. That always helps. So thank you. That answers a lot of the questions and really helps the board move the things along. So thanks for that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other comments? Always a good job. Thank you again. Echoing
Thank you.
Manager Baki. It's always a pleasure to get your reports. Okay. So I don't think we have anything to do except accept these. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
The next agenda item is the O&M update as well.
Yeah, exactly.
I did provide the video for that and be happy to answer any questions. In summary, we had a pretty successful year with the O&M, moving that program forward. Highlights would be the addition of the database that allows us to do rapid assessments of the projects that we've completed and assess any maintenance needs. We have photo points that we have established at all the projects that'll help us track them through time, kind of see visually how things are progressing. So that's one of the key achievements of this past year. It's really helping to round out that program and make it more directed moving forward. So we have a real nice pathway to keep us on track and to track those projects and maintain them as needed.
Wonderful.
Be happy to answer any questions on that as well.
Well, I just have a comment to make, and I think, you know, I need to talk with you and Mike about some of the questions that came up at the meeting last night on the vulnerability. They were interesting questions from people who are claiming that their areas are holding water too much, and so they're convinced that there's blockage upstream or this is the Bixby Park area. So they were interesting questions, and I have a lot of things to report back to you and see if there's answers or if we need to do something else to get those answers. So I'll call you sometime here in the next few days, and we can set up something for maybe next week to hear some of those comments. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next item. Oh, this is where I was gonna make my little announcements. I have some comments to make on rules and some changes maybe in the operations manual. These are things that have been building over the last, year or two. We haven't done this in a while. So I just wanted to give the board a heads up. It's nothing that's immediate. But I'm looking at maybe April, having those things to bring to the board. If anyone wants to do that with me, make a work group out of it, that's fine. Or just have you present or send your questions or comments on changes that you might want to make in those documents. So you've got some time to think about it. We'll bring it up again at the next meeting. And so think about whether you'd like to be on that work group or just have it be each of us doing our own, list of suggestions. Okay?
President Anderson, can you clarify a little bit? I'm not clear on what you're talking about. Are you talking about bylaws or what is it you're referring to?
Yeah, well, the operations manual, we have, I think it's called the governance manual, where a lot of the things are. And then in the rules, those are the rules that are part of our evaluation process, on permits. And there was an issue that came up on Comfort Lake that created, kind of a problem. And I think that rule needs to be clarified. So it's things like that. And, some of you may not have had that kind of experience yet, but this is the whole purpose of looking at these things from time to time. And it's been, I think the last review that we did was several years ago. But it's a way, when you see things that aren't working quite the way you'd like them to, that's an opportunity to tweak the rules, adapt them to a situation that may not have come up before. So that's how you need to look at it. It's not that the program's bad, it's just, some things happen from time to time and you need to tweak things a bit. So that's it. So be thinking about whether you want to have a work group or if, again, you want to have just each manager look at things that might have come up in their own experience, and we'll just aggregate all of those comments. Okay,
it's
so we don't
basically-
need.
Just
Yeah,
to
go ahead.
clarify again, it's basically the governance manual and the rules manual, right? It's not the employee
Yeah.
handbook. Handbook has just been done.
Oh,
So we're
no,
not
no,
gonna
no,
look at
no,
that
no,
again, right?
No,
Okay.
no, it's not that.
All right.
It's not that at all.
Just clarifying. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Okay, I think this now we're ready to go into closed session.
Summary and
Oh, summary, thank you. All right, summary and approval of board direction is next, and I think Chuck, that's yours.
Yes, Madam Chair, just a couple of items.
Mike.
Staff will make inquiry into the Chisago weed management area work. EOR and staff will review the information that they have and can immediately obtain regarding the North Shore Trail road work and will coordinate with Manager Anderson and Manager Schmaltz in advance of Tuesday's city meeting. Staff will reach out to Minnehaha Creek Watershed District regarding boundary signage. And Manager Anderson will be in touch with staff with feedback and questions regarding the Bixby Park project area.
Sounds complete to me. Anything missing from the manager's perspective? Nope. All right, thank you, Chuck. Next, we will be moving into closed session to finalize Mike's review process. And he's requested that, and so we want to say good night to everyone else. Board members stay. Bye-bye. And to that little one hanging on you, Blaine.
So those are just, Blaine has additional arms.
Yeah.
That's how I get so much done.
Yeah. Good night. Who's with you, Blaine?
It's my daughter Dylan. You come in?
Dylan?
Chris, it won't be long for you.
Did you say Dylan is her name?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hi, Dylan.
Hi.
And good night. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye bye.
Good night.
Good night. Thanks, Blaine.
So, Madam Chair, so you do want a motion and a vote to go into closed session in order to discuss personnel evaluation of the administrator. And for the record, he has been asked whether he would like that to occur in open session, and he has not requested that.
Correct.
And just shut it at the end of the night.
No,
You'll sign off, or you're already on it.
Okay, you go. Yep, you can't see them right now. Mike will sign on in just a second. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.
They can see me.
Thanks.